Hello, friends. Welcome to Sibyl's Lab and to Sibyl Unscripted. This is the monthly podcast where we put a story of our choosing from the screen or the page into conversation with the tarot. I'm a literature and film professor, so I'll be bringing some of that structured reflection to our discussion format, but we're going to get as conversational and as petty as we normally like.
So for April of 2025, this month, we'll be discussing the 2024 film Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. It's a remake of the 1922 film of the same name, both of which are adaptations / ripoffs of Bram Stoker's 1897 Gothic horror novel Dracula.
It's just a straight up ripoff.
I mean, there was a whole legal, a lawsuit over it. Let's be honest.
If you know the story Dracula and not the film, we're going to do a story summary so you can tell yourself whether you think that this story summary matches the film or the story that you know to be Dracula. This is a warning now that there are spoilers. We're going to go through the plot, so we're going to cover what happens at the end here and as a part of the conversation. And while I'm thinking about it, also, we'll say a bit more about the decks, but consider this a warning that there may be some nudity in the decks, too. Nothing explicit, but, you know.
I mean, there's nudity in the movie, too, so I feel like
in the spirit of the film. All right, here is the story summary. Set in 1830s Germany, the plot follows the story of newly married Ellen Hutter. Her husband, estate agent Thomas Hutter, travels to Transylvania for a fateful meeting with her prospective client named Count Orlok. Ellen is depicted as mentally fragile and troubled by dark visions, so upon his departure, Thomas leaves her under the care of their friends Friedrich and Anna Harding. If you know the Bram Stoker novel on which Nosferatu is based or have seen the original 1922 film Nosferatu, this story unfolds much the same way. There are no surprises here. Thomas suffers Orlok's manipulation and feedings. Orlok arrives in Germany and seeks out Ellen, bringing plague and killing her loved ones. Ultimately, in this film, she sacrifices herself to Orlok after quite the erotic encounter in order to protect her remaining loved ones and the larger populace. We have the hero, Ellen. And here's an interesting factoid. If you did not know, this is the sun card from my deck, which I'll say more about in a minute. But the 1922 film Nosferatu originates the piece of vampire lore that says that vampires die in the sun. In Bram Stoker's novel and in lore before that, vampires were weakened by the sun, but it was really fun apparently in 1922 to catch a vampire on fire in the film. And so that's where we get that, and it has stuck around.
I actually did not know that. That's good.
Now you know. All right, let's introduce our decks. And Amelia, could you share a little bit about what your choice is?
Yeah, so I'm going to be working with the Lacrimosa Tarot, which we've shown on this channel before, but this is by rosebaetarot, is her handle on Instagram, and it's a really beautiful rendition or curated deck with historic art pieces, and the reason, and it was published earlier this year in 2025, and the reason I picked this deck is, it's dark, it's beautiful, and this is a really dark and beautiful and moody film, but I also really like, not only there are quite strong Catholic overtones or undertones in this deck, which I actually felt a lot as we were moving through the movie. There's that juxtaposition or that kind of knocking between conservatism, moralism, and the desire of vampirism and the unholy, but also this is a really intimate deck. It's not a typical curated deck in that here's an entire painting. Here's a section of a painting. Here is, the arm of a knight. And so I think there's an intimacy to the movie. And so I think it really kind of matches that theme and that flavor. And that's my deck.
Excellent. I will be working with Robert M. Place's Vampire Tarot. Here's a little book that comes with it. It was published originally by St. Martin's Press in 2009. This deck is long out of print. My version that I'm using is trimmed and edged because I am a godless user of tarot, and I'm here to cut up and edge tarot decks. This deck is very thematically on the nose. It's called the Vampire Tarot, but it is very rooted in Bram Stoker's novel. The guidebook explores that very clearly, and the images that you'll see in the deck express that. But there are allusions to larger English lore of vampires. The suits are titled thematically with wands as stakes, pretty shiny, wands as stakes, cups as holy water, swords as knives, and pentacles as garlic flowers. A number of the majors are also retitled. What were you going to say?
It's Nosferatu himself. I love
it. So the majors, a number of them are retitled to match the novel. So we have the Count as the Emperor, but yes, we do have Nosferatu particularly. So I pulled out those cards. Here we have the Seven of Holy Water. And this is the 1922 German expressionist film, obviously. Although we should petition Robert M. Place to make a new Vampire Tarot based on this edition of Nosferatu. Here we have Seven of Knives, of Nosferatu himself again. Here we have the gentleman himself once more, Nine of Knives. He's a dreamy fellow. Yes, so that is what I will be using.
I love it. All right.
Oh, I did want to show, actually, this is another a little factoid. I have to tell you, this Robert M. Place book includes all of these factoids. So according to Robert M. Place in his book, Pamela Coleman Smith, who in this deck makes an appearance as the Queen of Holy Water, is the artist, of course, behind the best-known tarot deck, or one of the best-known tarot decks, the Rider-Waite-Smith. And she worked at the theater managed by Bram Stoker and was a lifelong friend of his. So she was pals with the author of Dracula himself. It's all very 6 degrees of separation. We're in conversation with her here. All right, so let's jump into the film itself. Amelia?
Okay, so now's the time where we put the cards in conversation with the story. So we are each going to share our impressions of the film and use a few cards to help explain that and hopefully capture those opinions. So I guess I should start by saying I love the 1922 Nosferatu. It's one of my favorites. I saw it first when I was in college 10,000 years ago, and it was part of a history of film class that I took as part of my theater degree. And there is just something it's a classic, right? And it's a classic for a reason. But I really appreciate the storytelling of the 1922 version. Coming from a background in theater, I do appreciate the theatrics of silent film storytelling, and that it is it's clear. You know what's happening from one moment to the next, and there's never any question about what's going on. Not to say that there's not building of suspense. I mean, I still remember the first time I saw Hutter go down into the crypt where the coffin was, and you're sitting on the edge of your seat and you know exactly what's going to happen, right? But it's still, it builds suspense without getting muddy. And so the first card that I picked for this version will kind of display what I think, and it's the Ten of Wands. And the reason I picked this card, so this is also, this is the deck that's based off of Rider-Waite-Smith, but I pulled from, the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith meanings, as well as the imagery and how things were depicted in this particular deck. And so the reason I picked this as a first card for how I feel about this movie is he's holding so much. He's literally holding the world. No, he's holding a skull in his hands and a cross. He's holding the world in his hands. And I kind of feel about this film, I feel like it was trying to do too much. I feel like it was trying to take too much out of a story that at its heart is really straightforward. I think it was just trying to lay on too many themes that modern audiences like to see. I think it was trying to appeal to a different type of person than what the, original or even traditional vampire stories and films, the people that those appeal to. And I think what it lacked was like a focus. And a story that we're trying to tell. When we focus too much on themes that we want to tell as opposed to the story, things get lost and they get muddy. And so that's my first card. Kind of demonstrates how I feel about it. And then the second card that I picked is this is the 7 of Coins, and it is a rose that is like about to bloom. It hasn't bloomed yet. It's a rosebud. And it is ripe and ready to bloom. And that's, again, kind of, I feel like it almost got there. Like it was almost what it needed to be for me. Again, I think it just focused too much on things that are other than the story. I won't get into my opinions on the redesign of Nosferatu himself. I am a little disappointed, but because you can't, like the original, he's emblazoned in your brain. Like once you see the original Nosferatu, you will not forget him. And I found this version to be very forgettable, like the actual design of Nosferatu.
We've got some hot takes. This movie has gotten phenomenal reviews from folks that I know and respect. So I am glad that I'm joined by my friend in not raving about this film, because a lot of people I really like and respect have nothing but good things to say about it. And I too have complicated feelings.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of generally how I feel. How do you feel about it, Danielle?
So I do have complicated feelings, and I think that my cards reflect that in a way that works for me. So for the first one, I chose Mina, or the High Priestess. And if you know the original novel, Mina corresponds to Ellen. So this is really our heroine of the story. I chose her. I find the film mesmerizing and muted in tone and sound. It's one of those films that, regardless of the story, it is so beautifully done. I don't think that you really can say anything against the artistic approach or the visuals of the film. I think that Eggers really did something powerful and stunning there. And much like the High Priestess does, I think, I felt invited to just sit back and absorb and take it in. It's impactful and subtle. It is not like the High Priestess. This wasn't a rushed story. So it had its pacing. And that is not itself a critique, right? I think that worked for the movie. And, the 1922 film isn't like happening. Stoker isn't rushing us along. But I found this approach especially meditative, and so I was there for it. I was on that journey. Here is the 6 of Holy Water, or 6 of Cups. This is my second pick. Most of the reviewers I love were going bananas over this movie, like I said. I'm much more lukewarm on this film. As we see, we have Dracula, or Count Orlok, holding Ellen/Mina here. We know, probably most of us who know the RWS know this idea of the 6 of Cups as the site of nostalgia and childhood, where we're kind of held. She looks held hostage to me. He is not letting her go. And I felt a little held hostage by this story. The legacy and lore attached to Dracula and Nosferatu, this version of the vampire archetype is so central to like what we understand to be the vampire. And this really explores, the film, I thought, explored really important ideas around female vulnerability, sexual vulnerability, madness, and mental health. Like, those are all really mature, interesting, important things. And I felt like I needed to give them my attention. And it was so beautifully done, right? All of these things, it felt like it was a work of art that was talking about important stuff, but I didn't find it fun. I was not enjoying myself doing the work of being present for it. And I didn't love that. I wished that I was having a little bit more fun. But, not every film is here for the fun. I will say, for folks who watch this and are like, these women don't know horror movies. I love horror movies. I grew up watching horror movies. I am here for spectacle. I'm here for like, I'm on an MCU kick. Like I'm here for all kinds of film, and I love a good horror movie. This felt like it was asking more of me than I wanted to give it. It felt like I was ready to write a graduate paper on it or something, and not necessarily like here for a vampire story. So that would be my take on it.
I mean, and I love a good vampire story. Like, I grew up watching Buffy. Like, I have read the vampire novels, Anne Rice's, Interview with the Vampire. Like, I've seen it all. I've done it all. Like, I love a vampire story. And this was something else.
It was, and we chose this because we love this genre and we're really open, and I really like dark decks and all of I just love it all atmospherically. This wasn't my favorite, and I think part of what my resistance is that it seems to be everyone else's favorite, so I'm like, no.
That's your wing.
That is, yes. All right, let's move into the next part. For this part, we're going to be sharing cards from our different decks that we think best represent the main characters. So we're going to be talking about Ellen/Mina and Count Orlok, and we'll talk about them separately. And for each of them, we're going to share what we think are significators from our decks that represent what we think is most important about these characters. We haven't collaborated on these, so I have no idea how compatible our different choices are, but also what outstanding questions exist. And we're going to read for these characters. Like, let's pull some cards and figure out if we can answer the questions that we are left with. I don't know what your questions are. I came up with some draft questions, and we'll see which ones stand out to us the most. But I am not above asking a petty question. I'm not above it. So let's see. We'll start with you, Amelia, on what is your significator or significators for Ellen, and why did you choose those?
Okay, so I picked two significators for Ellen. The first I picked is the Eight of Swords. And I picked this for very obvious reasons. Like, Ellen is very much a woman that is trapped in the darkness of her own mind. Like, she is trapped very much in her nightmares, right? But the reason I like this particular depiction of the Eight of Swords is something that I actually saw rosebaetarot say about this card in particular on her Instagram, is that she specifically broke the frame here with the figure's hand, as if she's kind of trying to reach out. And I think there is an element of Ellen that is very much trying to break herself free of this. This is what her marriage to Thomas represented, was getting to escape this darkness. But we know how it ends. And then my second card that I picked for her is the Ace of Hearts. And in this deck, the hearts are the cups. Okay. And very much Ellen is a woman who is full of desire. And I know typically we would pick a wands card for that, but the cups being the hearts in this deck, there's just, look at the hands. They're holding this flaming illuminated heart. It's just this is Ellen. She is a woman, and who as a young girl even was prone to just a welling of feelings. And I think that is a good representation, or that's my representation of her.
Okay. I chose the Eight of Knives, so my deck's version of the Eight of Swords, and I chose this because in this image, I think she's handcuffed to darkness and madness, no way out. Everyone is making some version of what I think is their best effort. So we have Friedrich and Anna trying to help her through this crisis that she finds herself in. Thomas doing what I think he would say is his best. I am underwhelmed by Thomas's, support as a partner. But she's handcuffed to this future. There's no getting her out of it. And here in a similar vein, I think that the star captures her destiny. She was always going to end up in the arms of the Count. If the star leads us to where we're going, it could only lead her to the arms of the Count. And I think that's really, no matter what questions we're left with, and let's see what those are, her arc is pretty clear. Like, what is the journey that she is meant to take, and what do we make of that? So here's what I came up with as a sort of something for us to think through. She's clearly a victim of her time. I mean, I think, she is a woman who's dismissed as mad and is clearly being sexually repressed. Like, this is not a subtle message. This woman is being really maligned in some ways, drugged when she really needs to be helped, spoken to, and supported. She pleads into the dark, and it is that plea that leads her to wake up the Count and ultimately, initiates their union. And it comes from a place of isolation and desperation. And yet her ultimate sacrifice and union with Orlok at the end is a moment of choice, desire, and agency. So what are the questions that you have, Amelia? And we'll see how they kind of jive with what my open questions are.
I don't know. The question I have is like, I have questions about the nature of her relationship with Orlok. Like, where did this come from to begin with? I know she talks about being lonely. She, was like desired some sort of like connection with somebody, but like, what's really going on there? What was really the catalyst for her initial like connection and relationship to Orlok is kind of the question that I have.
Interesting. Well, why don't you, there is no reason why we can't each read for our own kind of outstanding question. Why don't you shuffle and read for that? So if you're pulling 3 cards, what are you really trying to answer here?
I think what I'm really trying to answer here is, what was the true motivation behind her initial relationship with Orlok?
Oh, I'm curious. I am open to this.
We have what she says in like her guarded shame,
Yeah.
but like what was really going on there?
Yeah.
That's the questions I have. Okay.
Did you like her? Did you like Ellen, or did you find her? I found her a little tiresome.
I found her a little tiresome too. Yeah. I think, I don't know. That's a good question, and one not to be, that's going to take a little too long to answer. Okay. So I pulled 3 cards asking about the nature of her motivation for her initial relationship with Orlok. And I got the Queen of Wands and the 6 of Swords and the High Priestess. I need to take a second to look at these. But you, tell me your initial impressions about those 3 cards.
Queen of Wands, 6 of Swords, and High Priestess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the Queen of Wands suggests, that's a pretty strong card. Like, here is a possessed and charismatic woman.
Yeah, they talk about, or they kind of allude to way at the end of the movie of her like possessing some kind of gift or some kind of like just general connection to like the supernatural. And I think that definitely this speaks to that, right? Like, so we've got, let me put them in order again. So we've got her, and she it's so fascinating because these two female figures are facing away from the 6 of Swords, which what a beautiful 6 of Swords, by the way, just the dove landing on the hand. I really like that. I think there's something about her nature that prevents her from any kind of peace. We've got this connection to kind of other realms. And then we have this High Priestess over here, again, connected to other realms, connected to deeper knowledge, to a sense of knowing of something greater or something not on this plane. And I think, the these 2 women facing away from that dove, it's I think she was kind of destined to not live a life of peace, and just not able to see peace and serenity knocking on her door. I think in a way she sought this out.
So this is a fulfillment of desire. She is not a victim here.
No, I don't think so.
And so the question I'm going to be shuffling and asking a question. My question is she at her core, and actually I think kind of fits with this, like, is she a victim? Is she not? Is she at her core a tragic character by the end? I mean, we have a woman who is sacrificing herself to a monster. There's no reading Orlok is like dreamy. Like, she ends up with this really, like, this hot guy who is taking her to, like, you know, it's a dark ending. And it is visually grotesque. However, we have a woman who, through this story, is being shamed for her sexuality. Sort of, you know, her desire is being pathologized, and her husband is deeply disinterested in kind of her expressing physical desire. And so she isn't just fulfilling, you know, she isn't engaging a sexual act only. It is a very erotic act. Am I not mature enough for this? What I say? It gets explicit.
If you feeds into the, like, desire narrative of vampires and vampirism.
But, you know, Anne Rice's vampire novels are sexy, erotic, like, whether it's homoerotic or they are sexy worlds. Orlok is grotesque. There is no, like, this is not a Brad Pitt vampire.
No, well, and I think this paints desire as this kind of, like, grotesque thing to be ashamed of.
Well, that's a pretty ugly. So is Eggers having us walk away with, like, a sense of sexuality and desire is bestial and vile? We don't love that.
I mean, maybe.
So that's going to be my question. Like, is there a way in which we read this as an affirmative ending? Because I can imagine that if she had lived, that she would have lived happily ever after with Thomas. Aside from him just being an underwhelming young man, she was a woman of passion and depth, and he was never going to be that. So I feel bad about how unforgiving I am. And I should say, it's always hard when you like the actors in something, because I like all of these actors so much. But man, like, I have some hard feelings. Bill Skarsgård, stop it with a camera. All right, so here are my cards to answer the question: what do we make? Do we make of her ending? Is it solely tragic, or is there a way to read it as kind of sexual agency and affirmative and powerful? And maybe not, right? Okay. We have some power cards. We have the moon, which in this deck is Mina or Ellen. So there she is. We have the sun, the vampire lit up on fire. And we have the hermit, which is a vampire kind of hiding in the woods, peeking around and watching people, but he's definitely a prowler. I mean, I think with this triumphant looking, am I in there? This triumphant looking moon, Mina Ellen figure, I think absolutely what we see in the film is her power and agency. I'll say this: I'm not reading this as the last card as like a triumphant and powerful ending. But what I do think we see is Ellen, she is not a victim of Orlok. Like, she made the choice to do what she did, and she ended up killing him. Like, she wins, and it was her choice to do what she did. And she wouldn't have been happy, right? Like, I don't think she would have been happy with Thomas. I think that we walk away from this kind of gothic tale feeling like she was always haunted. She was never going to be comfortable with this life. So I do think that there's a way to walk away from this story feeling like she has agency. She lit the vampire on fire. She is making a life of her choice, but she's always going to be looking from the outside because she was not in life included, and she desperately wanted to be. It was clear that she wanted to connect with people. And in death, it's not as if she found her lover, the vampire, to live happily ever after with. She's always that liminal figure. So I don't walk away from this feeling like, wow, triumphant. Like she had this really erotic experience, and and here is a woman who's expressing her power in that way. But I do think that we walk away feeling like she is a woman who's decided her fate over and above everyone else. So I think that that's at least how I feel about it.
No, I definitely think there is like something to be said for a woman making a choice, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I agree. Like even the cards that I pulled of the two women facing away from that dove in the center, like it's just, she was never going to find comfort, or she was never going to find what she desired from like the regular world with people. Part of me wonders if there's something kind of waiting for her on the other side of all of this.
One can hope. I mean, it's pretty bleak, if not. I mean, as we talk about it, you can't help but feel like it's deeply tragic. And I wouldn't feel that way if it wasn't so clear. I'm looking for the cards for Orlok. If you want to look for yours too, we'll get to that next. But, it was just so clear in the film that she desperately wanted to have a normal life. She wanted to have a marriage and children and like just do like the whole 1890s very bourgeois thing and like live her best life, and I'm here for it. But that was never fated to happen for her. So that is sad. Yeah. Poor Ellen. I did find her a little tedious though. I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's the dramatics of it all. And like the original is that way too. It's like, come on, like he's leaving. Like he'll be back.
Yes. But the overwrought story. All right, let's talk Count Orlok. For my significators for Count Orlok, I have selected once more on the nose the Count / Emperor / Dracula. It shows the way. So for me, I chose this because very much Orlok is a man who is looking out of his window at the world, and it is his domain. He rules it, and he's figuring out, what do I want and how do I manipulate the world around me to make it happen. There is no pause for evaluation of how appropriate it is to think like, how many people do I need to kill to get to I want? This is like not a man who has or creature that has finer feelings. I also chose the Two of Stakes or Two of Wands because absolutely his animating desire in the entire story is his pursuit of the maiden. Like, he is looking to get what he wants, but what he wants is absolutely anchored and defined by his pursuit of Ellen, and he will have nothing else. So it's not a man who is pursuing riches and land. It's all sort of orchestrated to get him to the maiden, death in the maiden. So he is an appetite. I love this quote. I think this might be a quote from the novel Dracula, but I'm not promising that, but it is not my quote. This is what I can say. Google, my friends, Google the quote. He is an appetite and nothing more. I just think that is absolutely true. All right, my friend, what do we have for Orlok from your deck?
All right. So a little on the nose here. I picked the devil. I mean, he ensnares Ellen in his, otherworldly ways, in his dark ways. And then as a pairing to Ellen's Ace of Hearts, I picked the King of Hearts. So here he is, like she is that flaming heart, and here he is holding her. He has her in his grasp. There's something about the way this story is told in this version that, their fates are tied up together, whether they want it that way or not. In the 1922 film, it feels much more like happenstance. I want to talk so much about like where was the book? Where was the, and I do think the like overall theme is different when it comes down to like brass tacks. But anyway, this version of this story definitely takes the approach that Ellen and Orlok are, his fate is tied to hers. Yeah. And so I think in a way, he's definitely her devil, but he also is his own enemy. Like, yes, his desire for her is eventually what destroyed him. So I think, he's also representative, like even to your point about that quote, he's an appetite and nothing more. Like, he's representative of desire. Like that's what he stands to be. And so that King of Hearts and the devil feel like they kind of hit on that.
It gets back to what you were saying before. If he represents desire, not a man with desire, but desire itself, desire is pretty grotesque in this world. I mean, I don't think we walk away from the film feeling like it's okay to have a sexual appetite. It's like, it's kind of a bummer.
Well, so in the original film, and we can talk about this while we're kind of pondering questions and stuff. In the original film, the book that she like reads basically says like, he, like, the young maiden will distract him, and so that he doesn't realize that the sun is even rising. And it's less like, oh, destiny, fate, she has to give of herself. It's like, no, she serves as a distraction so he doesn't realize the sun's rising and he dies. Yeah. So like there's something about male desire specifically in that version that's seen as like this destructive force, Yeah. And that the temptation of the woman's flesh being something that will lead to the downfall of man, which
biblical. Biblical narrative of the evil Eve. All right, let's talk outstanding questions. So I'll share my question and see what the cards have to say to me. I wrote, Ellen is depicted as having a special spiritual sensitivity and an affinity for the darkness. And it's those characteristics that lead to her awakening of the Count. So if we remember the very beginning of the film, she's yearning to have something fulfill this darkness. And here we have her call to the dark, into the dark, wake up the Count. She's really vulnerable to his manipulation once he wakes up, but it's her yearning that stirs him. This, in my mind, this asks, in some ways that means he's a passive figure. It's not the Count is awake and he like goes hunting and here is Ellen. It's Ellen calls to him. Is she like the only one who could have done this? Like, are there no women closer to him? Are we to think that, like, is Ellen profoundly unique in her darkness, or are there other Orlocks with other Ellens? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there something about her?
So is the importance, how do we phrase this? Is the importance that it was Ellen that called him? Yes. Or does he just need to be called by any woman?
Like, could it have been me or you if we were a special, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
And if that's the case, if it was just like, she called him, it was the right call at the right time, there's a kind of passive something about that, right? Like, he couldn't be stirred until a woman called. That's interesting. So I want to know about that. Is there something, what is it about that connection with Ellen? Did it have to be her? Or, what is that? So let's see. That's a poorly articulated question, but I'm allowed to do that, and nobody's paying me to read. If only Count Orlok would come see me as his tarot reader and ask me.
You don't want that. You don't want that.
I'd ask him not to sit too closely. You kind of want to meet a vampire, don't you? Okay.
Not that version.
Yeah, I would like to meet an Anne Rice vampire. No Nosferatu vampire.
Give me a Brad Pitt vampire. I'll take that.
I'll even take a Bram Stoker's Dracula, like, 1990s Dracula.
Gary Oldman Dracula.
Yes. All right, so let's see what we have. We have the Six of Stakes, which is the Count himself with his brides. We have the Knight of Stakes, Edgar Allan Poe. We know that guy, writer of Gothic fiction and poetry. And we have the Knight of Holy Water, Sheridan Le Fanu. The knights in this deck are, I think all of them are creators of some kind of vampire lore or fiction. So Le Fanu wrote The Vampire with a Y, which is, I think, the very first piece of vampire fiction in English. And Poe has a vampire in one of his pieces of poetry. So let's see. What do these cards have to say to me? Well, before we even get to our knights, here we have Dracula in front of 3 brides. It would seem to imply that she was not, it didn't have to be Ellen. Like, it could have been, and the lore is, for folks who don't know, the lore tends to be, in a lot of Dracula lore, that he has 3 brides. So, like, he has ladies around him. He has a harem. I don't think that the vampire, the Dracula Nosferatu we get in the film, that we get the impression that he's looking to build a harem. It is Ellen or no one. But, I mean, what would I say? What do all these guys have to say? Maybe what we see here are 2 men of the age. There are a lot of men running around trying to protect the world from Nosferatu. Nosferatu did, Count Orlok, I keep calling him Nosferatu. Count Orlok did find himself in kind of a bind. There were a lot of people working against him. He had a person that he was pursuing. It could simply be that he fixated on her. There are a lot of people getting in the way of his desires and him pursuing what he wants, that he needed to fix on this one woman and get her. It could have been a number of women, but in this case, like, he knew he had her who would suit him, and he had leverage, which is Thomas, and he knew the area she was in Germany. Like, it seemed like circumstances came together in a way that made her an especially good fit for his pursuit. But I do think it didn't just have to be Ellen. I think this was circumstantial. I'll say that. I think this is circumstantial.
All right. Okay, so my question that I have actually kind of piggybacks off of that. And that is, like, what was his desire? Like, was his desire for the flesh of a woman, or was his desire for him to, like, build his kingdom, or, what have you, his domain? Because it seems like the two were not working together in his favor. So I think that's what I'm going to go with.
Okay.
What was his desire? What was his, like, at the end of the day, what was it that he actually wanted? Yeah, like you said, I mean, passive is one way to describe it. He also just seemed like a really desperate figure. He was like, his pursuit of her was so, like, unyielding, and so, I don't know, he's thirsty.
How he ends up dying, right? Like, he is so driven by hunger and desire that she knows she can trick him into staying out in the sun.
Yeah.
He's not paying attention to anything except that hunger and desire. I mean, he's kind of pure id. Like, he has no sense of self-preservation beyond, I have to say, seeing naked Orlok, that was a lot. It's not pleasant.
Not what I needed to see. Okay. Well. All right. So we get the 9 of Wands, the Hermit, and then we come back to our Ace of Hearts, which, remember, was my significator for Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to roll with it here. This is all part of the same big giant reading that we're doing, right? Like, and she's the end goal. She is the end of all of this for him. I think there's a weariness that comes from being alone in your castle, away from, and, like, we even go through before, all of the, like, townspeople and the Romany people, like, they're hunting vampires, and you know, there's a hatred around his existence there, which I don't think he's necessarily bothered by, but there's a definite weariness to living a life of, you know, on your own, whether you want to call what he's doing living, but existing, being in space on your own. And I think also, you know, what's a kingdom if you don't have somebody to share it with, right? Yeah. I think, you know, and that kind of initiates an interesting conversation about, like, even monsters crave affection, even monsters crave companionship. You know, that's, now we're getting into other monster theory, but like, yeah, I think there's something to be said there for that, you know, partnership, companionship.
We have empathy for him or sympathy for him. There is something about his desperation and loneliness that is so mournful. I mean, I don't think that is our overwhelming feeling about him, but certainly there is something there. There's something, and maybe it's because his absolute drive to connect with her is, I mean, there's something childlike about it. Like, he has no agency beyond his need for this person, but he's also kind of an a-hole monster.
So, like, there's that.
Too bad for him. All right, so let's do, we're going to do a final reading for this episode of our podcast, and I'm going to do a reading, and then you can do a reading as well. Each of our readings are about what we specifically should take away from the viewing experience. I have complicated feelings. You have complicated feelings. They are equally complicated. I have to tell you, I feel so much better that you're not on here. Like, it was amazing. But let's see what I should walk away from this experience with, me particularly, and other people who share my version of complicated feelings. So let's see. I have the Knave of Knives, the Ten of Stakes, and the Two of Garlic Flowers, or Two of Pentacles. So we have the Knave of Swords, the Ten of Wands, and the Two of Pentacles. All of the knaves or pages in this deck are characters from vampire lore or fiction. So, the Nightmare of Life and the Knave of Knives. I would say that this is an invitation to really kind of align with the struggle of the vampire. Like, what does it mean to kind of, as we talk about the sympathy that we may feel for him sometimes, there is undoubtedly a part of me that you know, is struggling to get out of the dark, or might feel that, like, that liminal separation or desperation. I have to tell you, I'm not like sitting here itching like to talk to my therapist about how I feel like maligned like Count Orlok, but all of us have that little something, that feeling of isolation or defensiveness. So I think that this is kind of an invitation to walk away from the film and think about the two-sidedness of the vampire struggle, like, not just me as the maiden, but like both the monster and the maiden being the same person. What does it mean to understand and align myself, not with just how would I feel as Ellen, but how do I feel as Ellen and Count Orlok at the same time, to contemplate what that struggle is, that shared struggle. So that's some imaginative work. I like that.
Okay. I like that for you. So I pulled, apparently it's just a hearts kind of movie. But I pulled the Two of Hearts, which I know this is kind of a dark deck and it's hard to catch on camera, but we've got like our rose blossoms around a cup. And then we have our Knight of Wands, which is kind of a close-up of a knight. And then we have our Eight of Hearts, which is a tipped over chair, and there's like some music in the front, a book of music in the front. So I am taking this to kind of mean that what I can take away from is like exploring a type of desire and a type of craving for particularly companionship that would prompt someone to leave everything that they know. You know, I mean, Orlok and Ellen both sacrificed themselves for you know, that union. And so I think, like, what does that mean for me? Like, what does that mean for my life? I'm not going to go like, you know, fornicate with a vampire, but like, at least I hope
your partner would appreciate.
I think my husband would have something to say about that. But I think, you know, what do I desire and what am I willing to do for that?
I like that. I like that. Would you say, I will say, as I think about the Knave of Knives coming up for me, I'm mostly engaged with this film as an heir swords experience, because I'm thinking about the history of, you know, womanhood at the time, the adaptation from Dracula to the Nosferatu story. Like, that's where I went, a kind of intellectual analysis. And you know, it activated the literature professor in me. And that's not true for all films or stories, but I definitely was doing that work. So it makes sense to me. There is something about like a kind of intellectual invitation to think about the archetype of the maiden and the monster. And like for me to ponder that, it seems like this was a hearts/cups/water experience for you. Is that right? Like, how did you engage with the film primarily?
Yeah, it was definitely a cups experience. I think they're like the wands have been coming up for me a lot too. And I think, you know, of course, I'm comparing it to the 1922 because it's a favorite of mine and I love it and I have a certain fondness for it. You know, and so I think I also was engaging with it as an artist and a maker of stories myself, you know, and thinking about storytelling and how would I tell a story and what story is trying to be told here. And I think that's kind of where I was really sinking in with it when I was watching it, was thinking about story and creation. And like, it was a beautiful film. Like I definitely got caught up in the beauty of it all. And yeah, from that.
It's so interesting to think of that. I'd like for us to answer that question in each of our Sibyl Unscripted. Like, in what was our element in engaging with the film? Because I absolutely, you know, I'm watching this film and thinking, okay, because I also taught film, like 1990 or 1922 German expressionism and the use of shadow, and like, what is how does that film history influence the use of black and white in this film? And you know, in that way, of course, some of my distance from the story and my lack of enjoyment, I think, is my inability to turn that part of my mind off. Like, everything is our engagement. This is not the fault of Egger is an amazing director, but like maybe part of my over focus on like what is the scholarly science of what I'm seeing. All right, so let us wrap up. We're going to wrap up as we usually do with a question for the collective. We're staying with the theme, one card for each of us, and we'll do a shared reading. So for tarot tubers and acolytes of Sibyl, what is it? We talked about what we should embrace or walk away from with about the film itself for each of us, but for the collective and for us, what is it about the vampire archetype that we should keep in mind this week? Like, how should we embrace our vampire, our inner vampire? And hopefully our inner vampire is dreamier than Count Orlok looking a hot mess.
You know what? Frankly, it was the mustache for me. Like, why was that? Everything else was decaying, but his mustache was nice and thick and full. I didn't.
It was a lot. I found him distractingly grotesque. That was the point, right? So like, the effects people accomplished exactly what they aimed for, but I think, my expectations from more recent vampire film were not that, because I found him even more grotesque than 1920s Count Orlok. I mean, it was a lot. They went for it.
Orlok is striking with the fingers and the
All right, so for me, I got the 3 of Stakes or 3 of Wands. The Count Dracula lore says that he can be a shapeshifter and can shift into wolves. And here we have the Pack of Wolves. So here's our 3 of Stakes. What do we have from you? The 4 of Wands, the 3 of Wands, 4 of Wands.
Yeah. I mean, I cannot ignore that we have one and then the other, right? Like moving from the 3 into the 4. So thinking about the idea of shape-shifting, it's like, how can we shape-shift to create the moments that we desire in our lives? What can we do to influence how we experience our day-to-day?
I like the idea of moving from the 3 wolf pack to the 4 of Wands, which is like the building of the home. I mean, here and in most 4 of Wands, we see a couple or multiple people, but this feels like a progression from the wolf pack or from the shared, like the collective. The vampire is a deeply individualistic creature. Like the vampire lives by himself. It is his kingdom and his alone. Like, he crafts his environment solely for himself. It's that id. And it feels a little bit of an invitation to selfishness, maybe. Maybe I'm just looking for what I want to look for, because that 4 of Wands certainly isn't like, look, selfishness. But there is something that I'm seeing here. I don't know, like that figure decides who to invite into their home. I don't know. I'm seeing something about moving away from a collective mind into like crafting into a kind of selfishness, maybe a little bit.
It goes back to like the whole like our themes of desire that we've been talking about. It's like it's desire is innately selfish, right? Like thinking about what you want and how you're going to get it. Like that's, there we go.
All right, everyone, be a selfish vampire this week. Amelia, send us off.
All right. So thank you so much for talking movies with us. Stay tuned for our weekly videos. We'll have the next one of these Sibyl Unscripted coming in May of 2025. And you can check the description box below. We'll have all the links to our website or social medias. You can book a reading with either one of us. We'll even gladly do readings on your favorite film and discuss
with a vampire deck if you want.
And to, assess the themes and how they might be relevant to you in your life. But until next time, we will see you in the lab.
See you in the lab, everybody.